thank you very much. Welcome to the Halftime Report. I'm Scott Wapner. Front and center this hour, the sharp decline in stocks today as a critical week gets underway. Yes, we have NVIDIA earnings looming, a lot more as well to discuss and debate with the investment committee. Joining me for the hour today, Jim Leventhal, Joe Terranova, Bryn Talkington, and Jason Snipe. Let's show you what the markets are doing. We're down more than 700 on the Dow, at least 1% declines across the board. We know the two most important stories of the week, the continued fallout from the SCOTUS ruling on the tariffs, the NVIDIA earnings on Wednesday. The president continues to attack the ruling. He continues to attack the court itself. He continues to threaten even higher tariffs. And there still remains a lot of uncertainty over that. However, if you look at financials, if you look at some of the private equity names, if you look at discretionary, which is down a bunch today, anything that saw any level of relief last week is back down today, Jimmy.
Yeah, and you started with the tariffs, Scott, and as we talked about on Friday, this is going to increase uncertainty in the short run, but in the long run, it should actually reduce uncertainty. There does appear to be a cap with these new tariffs of 15%, above which the president can't go. So, yeah, there's a lot of questions over the weekend. Are various countries going to adhere to their deals? That uncertainty will linger, but I think what we're seeing today, Scott, is some of the other issues that were pretty big last week. Continuing concerns about private credit. I think that's what's hanging on to the financials in particular. Let's not forget the State of the Union address tomorrow, and there's a lot that's going to come up in that, not just lambasting the Supreme Court, but the president's going to lay out what his plan is, should lay out what his plan is with Iran, and I think that's hovering over the market as well. So, you know, just those two things alone, concerns about private credit and potentially attacking Iran, those would take top billing if it weren't for the uncertainty increase in the tariffs. Put it all together, there's a lot of uncertainty, Scott.
Yeah, we'll get to some private credit-related things as the show develops today, but all those names are down, and down a lot.
Yeah.
The private equity related names, we're talking 7-8% declines. The major banks like Citi's down 5%, Goldman, JPM are down. Bryn, so it leads me to you on this notion that things that got relief on Friday, and I use it in quotes because it was obviously short-lived for many of these stocks, didn't react the way that you thought they might on this tariff ruling. I think of Nike and I think of On Holding, which you sold both. You sold them, which is interesting to me in that you bought them because you assumed that SCOTUS would rule the way it did, but the stocks didn't react the way you anticipated they might. So now you're out. Tell me more.
Welcome to investing, right? And so, I mean, both great companies, right? Obviously, Nike's in a turnaround. On is just crushing it. And so I just felt that on both of these earnings calls, Scott, they consistently talk about tariff headwinds. And so I thought when the SCOTUS ruling would come out, that would kind of settle that. But obviously, the Supreme Court didn't even talk about the refunds. You know, we were all witnessing live, you know, President Trump's reaction. And so I felt like the thesis around my trade did not play out. And so I just, you know, sold it and moved on. And so I think it's important that when you have a thesis that doesn't work out, I like to move on and just like, let's play another day and another type of investment. But to me, it just like has a downward pressure on these two names because I think tariffs are going nowhere fast, clearly with what Trump came out with afterwards.
Yeah. So, Jason Snipe, what about you? You know, a lot of assumptions that I think were being made on Friday maybe evaporated over the weekend. And if you pay attention to what the president's posting on social media this morning, whether you believe it's going to happen in the degree that he suggests it might or not, it does lead to an uncertain stock market that looks pretty red.
There's no doubt about it, Scott. And I think, you know, my initial response obviously was 10%. Announcement on what those tariffs would be, and then later on 15% over the weekend, and then also communication about additional levies going forward. So I think there is concern about what the story is going to be. Obviously, you know, we experienced something very different in Liberation Day last year. It's nothing like that, but just uncertainty about will there be tariff refunds? What is that story going to look like? How does that affect margins, and how does that affect business going forward? And then just obviously there's the slide that we're seeing in financials. Yes, the private credit story, but also some of the exposure to software. We continue to see that slide. So I think there's a lot in the pool right now that's kind of disrupting markets today, and I think that's what we're seeing.
I mean, mega caps, Joe, are down reasonably substantially. I said all of the banks, all the big ones, there are the private credit names, the software stocks. You take your pick because you got a lot to shoot at today in terms of how this market continues to feel pretty unsettled and uncertain about the road ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's really been the theme for 2026 so far, a market that's kind of spinning all over the place. And I find myself just looking to limit damage in where I am invested. I don't see very much on the horizon here that you want to get excited about, maybe some energy names. But other than that, it really is about playing defense. And you look today with the financials. Think about the financials coming into 2026, one of the favorite sectors. We carry an overweight to it in the ETF. And I think the consensus very overwhelmingly was very bullish as it related to the financials itself. So S&P equal weight breaking down in the last couple of days and looking ahead to NVIDIA's earnings on Wednesday, I think that just really intensifies the importance of those earnings to try and just steady this market and give investors something that can act as a near-term catalyst, because I don't see one right now.
I'm glad you went there, Joe, because, and I'll throw it back to you, JP Morgan, on sort of what you're talking about. If Mag 7 can't lead, U.S. stocks won't either. In other words, if you're going to have a continued breakdown, Joe, of Mag 7, don't put all your marbles on the equal weight and the rest of the market saving you, because according to JP Morgan, it probably won't happen.
No, and again, the evidence is there that it's not. Industrials moving lower. And when you talk about the Mag 7, right now, really, it is Alphabet, Apple, and NVIDIA that really appear to have the strongest bullish momentum and really doing the work as it relates to the bullish price action. So NVIDIA is incredibly important. In the last 2 quarters, it really hasn't had the follow through that you would have anticipated off what was really good earnings reports. The hope is that something different in terms of the price reaction can occur on Wednesday. And again, that gives you a near-term catalyst.
Yeah, Jimmy, it does come with a lot at stake. NVIDIA does. To Joe's point, that stock's actually been moving up. It's like 5.5% over the last week. So it's having a little bit of a move into the number. Apple's been moving up. Alphabet is in the red today, but not nearly as much as some of the other stuff. So this has to go well at this point. With a wobbly market, as I said, with a wobbly tech trade, there can't be anything that you point to after the fact and say, this is concerning.
Yeah, I really don't want to have to explain a bad reaction to NVIDIA on Thursday morning. First off, I think the earnings should be great. I think with everything we're seeing, whether it's the Meta announcement last week, whether it's China sales, which start and stop, at least the news flow on it starts and stops, there's every reason to think that the earnings should be good and the guidance should be excellent. Good
enough and excellent enough. That's where it really, because I don't think anybody out there is going to disagree with you in one sense.
No. Right.
Of course they're going to be good.
So the question is,
you see what the spend is. Of course they're going to be good. Of course the guidance is going to be good, and Jensen Huang is going to be positive about the demand that he sees off the charts from here for the foreseeable future. But the bar now, I feel, is at such a level that I'm not necessarily sure that even the best high jumper in the world is going to be able to just easily get over this thing.
I guess you could say that the bar is high. I might actually take the other side of that, not just to be argumentative, but the valuation on NVIDIA has come way, way down. And if you look, low 20s on a forward multiple, if you look at a PEG ratio, around 1. This is now a, fairly cheap stock at the least. I would say it's growth at a reasonable price. None of this says how the stock is going to react in the aftermarket Wednesday or on Thursday. And that's really the tell. I think we should take a little bit of comfort, not just that it's moving up today, but as you pointed out, Scott, it has been moving up. It's been in fits and starts. This is obviously a very important stock for all of us as a portfolio manager, for my clients. So we watch it like a hawk. And I do have to say, the feeling, now you know me, I'm an analytical guy, but the feeling is it wants to go higher. Famous last words? I don't know. Others, are participants in this. It feels like it's got a bid to it.
I mean, Bryn, the street obviously is very positive coming into the print. Morgan Stanley expects strong results, very high confidence on the full year. JPM, little to suggest NVIDIA will not, in quotes, once again, in parentheses, once again deliver a beat and raise. Loop, already bullish. Our work suggests even greater momentum is brewing. So it gives you an idea of what the street thinks is going to happen. I guess it just comes down to whether that's even going to be enough.
Yeah, it's like what's priced in. It's not going to be a surprise when they have 65 to 70% earnings growth. I will say this, if you pull up a one-year chart on NVIDIA, so while Joe is correct, it really didn't move the last couple of quarters. Over the last 1 year, it's up 42%. So to Jim's point, this has been a great grower over the last 1 year. To me, it comes down to, we know the numbers are going to be great. I think this is all priced in. I mean, I have calls at 200. I hope it doesn't get called away. But that 195, 196 continues to be a really strong barrier that I'm not sure with the sentiment in the market it's going to be able to get over there. But I mean, when you look at the one-year performance, this is one of the top performing stocks, last year, probably the top performing maybe of the mega caps besides Google.
The worst performing mega cap year to date anyways, Microsoft. I think you all know what's been happening in software. So, by the way, kudos on coming in here today. Appreciate you.
You too.
Appreciate you. Well, I mean, I have no choice. But, I mean, obviously, given, Bryn can't and Jason, they both live out of town. Nice effort, Joe. Whatever.
Well, let's
but
give him
anyway,
a break. It's LIRR.
Jimmy is here.
Metro North came through. LIRR needs to up its game.
So you bought more Microsoft. Do you think this sell-off is overdone?
Let me be clear, Scott. The sell-off could continue. It could very well continue. I'm not coming out here and telling the viewers that this is the bottom. There's no way to know that. What I am telling you is for a long time, over a year, I've been underweight this name. I've been half the overall market weight. And you know what? When you're half the overall market weight, you're making a decision that you're either going to sell that half you own or you're going to put the other half on sometime soon. And now the price has gotten to a point where I am willing to pull the trigger. Again, low 20s multiple. We know what it does, and we know what the concerns are about the spend on hyperscaler, on the AI infrastructure. But let's not forget that they've got a lot of profits going on in that Azure business. They also have the basic operating software system that is pretty monetizable as well. Great balance sheet. We talk about Meta, Oracle, and the damage that's being done to their balance sheet. Microsoft is in a net cash position. So what I'm seeing here is a great company on sale at a great price. It doesn't happen that often. Let me go back to where I started. It can go lower from here. I'm thinking about Alphabet last year, a whole different story. But let's not forget that was in the mid-teens as a forward multiple. So there's nothing magic about 21, 22 times whatever the forward multiple is. But it's a price at which I'm willing to say this is a buy right here.
All right. And Joe, your lighting, I don't know, man. I mean, if you're going to be at home doing the show from now on, you need to invest. Look at Snipe and Bryn glowing.
Yeah, I know.
Light right at them, looking great. Joe,
I know.
Do you think that make an investment? Come on. Do you think that Microsoft is oversold? Do you think this is a good place to buy a little bit more like Jim did?
No, I think you have to wait on Microsoft because I think it's part of the entire software universe that's under pressure right now. And the Azure growth did show a little bit of moderation in the most recent earnings report. The street didn't react positively to it. So I don't see Microsoft right now as the opportunity when you're looking at these Mag 7 names. And again, to me, it's about NVIDIA, it's about Alphabet. Jensen Huang addressed it with you in San Francisco about market share. I want to hear about that on the call. Alphabet's got the tensor processing units, but it seems as though for Microsoft, they're a little bit on the defensive, and I don't like the relationship and the proxy that it is as it relates to OpenAI. And a lot of people will look at SoftBank. OpenAI.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will look at Microsoft and they'll look at SoftBank as that proxy for the private investment in OpenAI. I think it's a little bit of a headwind.
All right. So the IGV is a new 52-week low today, Jason. So if you were looking for any kind of new week, new relief for that space, you're not getting it, and it was already going to be a good week. I mean, an important week, maybe not a good one.
Absolutely.
Salesforce, Snowflake, Workday, Dell, they all have earnings this week. These are pretty important companies at a really important time.
There's no doubt about it, Scott. And for me, obviously, we own Snowflake. And I think, the stock is down 25%. I mean, the IGV is down close to 30% so far this year. Snowflake obviously hasn't traded well this year. And there was a little bit of a soft guy in the operational margin last quarter, and the stock was off around 10%. For me, though, in terms of data warehousing, this is the best of breed. I continue to like this stock. I think from an enterprise perspective, there's this theme where you're looking for these unified plays like a snowflake with the tools that they have. So I continue to like this stock. I think in the short term, tactically, to Joe's point and to Jimmy's point, a lot of the software names can continue to experience some volatility. But I think this is the best of breed in terms of data warehousing, so we're going to continue to hold this one.
Oh, no, Jim, look at this, down 9%. Jonathan Krinsky today speaking about, what's been happening here, maybe what hasn't been happening. He says it remains a key wild card, software does. We felt that we saw a capitulation, but the lack of a bounce is concerning. Losing recent support and its long-term uptrend would likely create broader market issues. In other words, until you get traction in some of these, you can't have names like this go down 8-9% just because the calendar turns from Sunday to Monday, and we still remain concerned about the disruption that AI is going to have on certain kinds of software stocks.
It is troubling. I thought that capitulation a couple of weeks ago had been reached. Obviously, it hasn't. And, there's more news that continues to pile on. It was just a couple of days ago, Michael Burry again saying more negative news about not just software, but AI overall, and whether this is all going to amount to anything, and maybe it just cannibalizes software and leaves no lasting economic benefit. I do look at things like that. And again, I'm not saying that today is the bottom, but I look at the amount of weight that's been piled on this sector. And I do think it's a time to start selecting stocks. But how I would select these stocks in this space are to go to the biggest, broadest, the ones that have the multi-product lines, the ones that have a very specific, like Microsoft, just as an example. I mean, Microsoft, as I said before.
Are you giving me one name?
That's the only one. I know that's the only one I'm buying today. I mean, I do think that one stands out. I think now I own Adobe. I'm not going to shy away from that, but I'm not adding to that today. That is one that I am concerned, even though it hasn't shown up in their profits. That does seem to be a very narrow focus in terms of the documents and the images that it generates. I happen to believe it's going to come through, but that's not one that I want to add today because in the selective environment where we thought capitulation happened, it hasn't.
What are you going to add to this thing when it's down like 40%?
I don't know. I'm not going to commit to adding to it. No, look, it's been a troubled stock, but it's also, I think, emblematic.
At some point, you gotta maybe have a conversation with yourself and say, maybe this turnaround or whatever you're anticipating happening there ain't going to happen, and that the market is actually getting something right.
It might be.
Let's put the chart back up. For the reason that the chart looks the way it does.
It very well might be. And you could have said the same thing to me a month ago, and I would have been right to sell it then. So I acknowledge that the stock market is saying something about this stock. I mean, at the moment, it's by its own virtues or lack thereof becoming a smaller and less important part of the portfolio. I can always take a tax loss there. I got a lot of other things going well in the portfolio. But there is something to be said by the fact that I'm not buying more of it right now, Scott. It's a little too narrow focus.
So, Joe, I'll come back to you because, it's been sort of indiscriminate in relation to software names that have sold off. People come on and say, well, but this group isn't going to be disintermediated, and this group's immune to all of this, like cyber. But as we learned again last week, maybe that is not necessarily the case. Anthropic comes out with this Claude Code security on Friday. What happens? All the stocks in the space sell off. In a week that was already a little troubled because Palo Alto was down after its own earnings report. So this is a big one from you. You sold CrowdStrike personally today.
I did. I was stopped out this morning. I had a stop in below the early February low at 374.52. I had this position on since December 4th of 2024 at 355. You don't want to turn a winning trade into a losing trade. The stop was elected early this morning, and I now have no cyber exposure, whether personally or in the Joe T ETF.
Wow, and that's a big statement, and that's probably the first time in, I feel like 3, 4, if not 5 years that you have had no cyber exposure whatsoever in anything.
I actually can answer that question before the pandemic, 2019. Last time I had no cyber exposure. So either personally or through Joe T, I have had cyber exposure. But right now, price is really the determining factor as it relates to my ability to stay in these trades, and price is going significantly against me. and I was trained to have a risk management strategy, despite what I feel my fundamental perspective ultimately could be. Yeah, in the end, I think cyber is a viable thesis as an investor in the long term, but price is speaking much differently to you right now.
I mean, it makes me want to come back to you, right? Price tells more of a story than, what your heart might believe. Just, what Joe was saying about, how he is viewing this one relative to how you're viewing Adobe, just to continue on that point just for a moment, because they're two diametrically opposed views on position and risk management. Let's just be clear.
Yeah, I'm not going to shy away from the implication that I'm getting this wrong. I have been getting it wrong with Adobe. I'm sorry to repeat myself, but I am making a statement by not buying more Adobe right now. I don't care how cheap it is. The one thing I will say in its defense is operationally it has been continually beating and raising, buying back shares, but the stock market doesn't care. And on this one, I'm not willing to go against the grain of what the stock market is saying. On Microsoft, I am. Okay. And you know what? There are times, you know me, Scott, you know how I invest. There are times where I will say the market, I think, is getting it wrong. I don't say it with arrogance or conceit. I say what I think I believe, what I know I believe. I believe that the market is getting it wrong on Microsoft, but it may well be getting it right on Adobe.
Okay. So back to cyber for a moment, Bryn, because you've always played this from an ETF perspective, the bug, right? So you own the whole basket. That's hit its lowest level since 2023 today. There's nowhere to hide.
Nowhere to hide. And that's where, when I looked over the weekend, that it was back at its 2023 levels. It's kind of, breathtaking. So I just stick to basics when these things happen. And my rules are, which I didn't make up, but I think they're good, is you never sell a stock making new 52-week highs, and you never buy a stock making new 52-week lows, which all of these stocks are. And so while I want to add to this, I'm going to wait and let it settle out, just because I do feel like it's catching a falling knife. And I agree with Jim, the market gets it wrong all the time. The market's efficient over the long term, but obviously we're in this panic because every time Anthropic sneezes, another asset class goes down. I do like what George Kurtz said. I think that's very true. He asked Claude if they could be overtaken by Claude, and Claude said, resoundingly no. But I do think you want to be wary. These stocks are making new 52-week lows on a daily basis, so I'm just going to wait to add to it. I'm definitely not selling.
Playing on what George Kurtz was saying, UBS is defending crowd today, along with some of the other names like Okta and Zscaler that have sold off. Dan Ives, as you would expect, is doing the same. Which he suggests these stocks continue to sell off on what he has called AI ghost trade fears. So we'll have to watch it. I want to hit a couple other stories too, guys, before we get out of our A block. It's a complete turn into a different sector of healthcare. Novo Nordisk tumbling 52-week low today after its obesity drug fell short of Eli Lilly's in a trial. So we were looking at both of those stocks today. Not that we have Novo ownership down 16%. But Lilly is a beneficiary, as we said, of this reporting here, of this trial. Joe, you do have Lilly.
I do have Lilly, and the stock has, over the last several years, rewarded for you to staying in the stock. There's been a lot of volatility in it through the ETF. We've made several moves, both to buy and to sell, but we're back in this name. They have what I believe is a really strong anchor as it relates to market share with these obesity drugs, and they're delivering in terms of the revenue growth. So right now, healthcare, Scott, overall as a sector is I believe, one of the favorite sectors for investors, and I think it's because of the overall environment we're seeing right now with this elevated volatility. It gives you a little bit of the defense, and it gives you a little bit of the offense, and clearly Lilly, with a very significant market cap, affords you a very comfortable weighting in that regard.
I think it's the window behind him, backlit, right?
It's the snow. It's the
photography
snow.
101.
Snow.
We need to send this guy photography for dummies. What's going on here?
Maybe he was celebrating the USA hockey win so much that he doesn't want too much light on his face. I don't know.
I mean, he's totally backlit.
If first of all, it's the snow, and if I was able to get out of my driveway, there's nothing more that I would want to do today than sit with you and Jimmy. But I have to get out of my driveway first.
All right. I mean, I'm just, trying to help you out. Want America to see that face of yours.
Well, they can see my teeth, right?
We'll be back. Right after this, we have our calls of the day. One firm says buy the dip in a name Bryn just added to her portfolio. We'll do it when we come back. All right, welcome back. Let's do some calls of the day. CBRE upgraded to a buy from neutral UBS, target to 185 from 175. Quote, AI fears present rare buying opportunity, one that you saw apparently last week. Bryn, right? You bought it last Tuesday.
Yeah, they had great earnings. They had record earnings. They're actually at the epicenter of a lot of the data center build out as that is being leased out, et cetera. And on the call a week and a half ago, the CEO said they've already saved 25% in their research division because of the AI tools that they're using, and they're going to continue to roll that out to their professionals. And so this, to me, is a great example of heavy driven by the economy, epicenter of real estate. They're going to be a beneficiary of AI using those tools to benefit the professionals that work there. So I think it's a great call. I think it's a good time to scoop this one up at this price as well.
All right. And by the way, I plugged in. I could have helped Joe early this morning. I put in GPT. What happens when you have a window behind you in a Zoom? One, you become backlit. Your camera exposes the bright window, not your face. As a result, your face looks dark. Details are hard to see. You might appear like a silhouette. All you had to do was plug it in.
Where's the?
All you had to do.
Where's the background from long ago with all the numbers?
Use AI to your advantage, Joe.
But why didn't you add to that input? And there's a blizzard going on behind me as well.
I mean, backlit's backlit. Whether there's if it was sunshine, it'd be even worse. It'd be even worse.
It would.
Let's talk
but
about
sunshine,
Texas Instruments.
I'd be with you.
Okay.
Texas Instruments,
well, that's true.
monolithic
Like I
power.
said, it would be even worse. I'm just kidding. Texas Instruments and monolithic power. Top picks at Citi. Both of them top picks, and you own both.
Yeah, I'm going to go in the direction of monolithic power here. This is a name that we purchased earlier in 2025. I think they have more of a fundamental tailwind behind them as it relates to powering enterprise data. They've done an excellent job here in capturing market share. This is more of a name that I'm confident about. Texas Instrument, it's a recent addition to the portfolio. The balance sheet is improving somewhat. You're seeing a little bit of a turn underneath as it relates to the businesses that they're servicing, and now they're making the investment as it relates to AI. That's a little bit more of a prove-it story. Monolithic power is more of an in-the-moment story.
Hey, how about this, Joe? Matt Boss over at JPM is looking at retail. TJX, target raise.
Yes.
Ross, target raise. Burlington, target raise. 154, 232, 356, respectively, for all of those names. TJX does report this week, and you happen to own all three.
Yeah, I like off-price. I like TJX. I like Ross. Burlington, maybe not as much. Yes, we do own it. It's worked for us in the portfolio. Balance sheet not as strong as TJX or Ross, but continuing to capture market share. And it's remarkable what TJX has done specifically related to the market share gains with Target.
Finally, Disney reiterated a buy today, 140 at Citi. Jimmy.
Boy, the stock is taking a long time to get into gear, and every time it shows an upward momentum, it just pulls back. I do think it is too cheap for the quality of this company, both in terms of its brand and in terms of what it actually does, the theme parks, the cruise ships, the studios, the streaming business. I'm sticking with it, but I've got to acknowledge this has been dead money for quite some time.
Okay. All right. Quick names. Jason Snipe, what do you got?
Amazon.
Bryn.
INFL.
Joe.
Merck.
Farmer.
Pacific Gas and Electric.
I'll see you then.
And software continues to get crushed. The sector ETF, the IGV, along with components like Salesforce, Adobe, DocuSign, Intuit, these are all at one-year lows or more and seeing additional drops of 5% or more today. Better story over in the commodities world, though, with gold at a 3-week high, silver popping around 5%. Could be a flight to safety trade on the back of tariff concerns. The 10-year yield showing that as well, dropping to around 402 today. And tariffs are where we begin as confusion reigns in the business world. And Europe is now postponing a vote on its trade deal with the U.S. after the president's latest moves. Eamon Javers is in Washington with the latest. Hi, Eamon.
Hey there, Kelly. President Trump took to social media this morning to warn nations not to back off of the trade deals that they agreed to last year, even though the legal authority for U.S. tariffs has now been stripped away by that Supreme Court decision on Friday. The president wrote, any country that wants to play games with the ridiculous Supreme Court decision, especially those that have ripped off the USA for years and even decades, will be met with a much higher tariff and worse than that which they just recently agreed to. Buyer beware. Now, that post coming after Europe warned over the weekend that trade deals with the U.S. could now be at risk. Bernd Lang, the chair of the European Parliament's Committee on International Trade, called it pure tariff chaos from the U.S. administration. And he wrote on social media, no one can make sense of it anymore. Only open questions and growing uncertainty for the EU and other U.S. trading partners. Now, the EU Parliament postponed a vote this week on the EU trade deal. The EU, remember, they've been debating proposals that would codify the trade agreement with the U.S. into law with a vote that was scheduled for Tuesday that's now going to be put off. Now, it's not clear when, if ever, that agreement will be finalized. Now, a White House official told CNBC on Friday that the U.S. expects all countries to uphold their end of the agreements with the United States, despite all of this tariff uncertainty. And I can tell you, Kelly, that I was just texting over the past hour or so with a White House official who said, when I asked for a response to the EU, this official said that the president's social media post earlier today is his response to the EU. That is, all countries better live up to their side of the deal.
Hello, everybody. It's Monday, February 23rd. It's 4:49 p.m. Eastern Time as I'm recording this video. My name is George. This is Blue Cloud Trading. And boy, look at these markets all down today. The Dow was down 1.66%, NASDAQ down 1.13%, S&P 500 down 1.04%, and the Russell 2000 was down 1.56%. Now, we just saw a few clips from the halftime report earlier today. They discussed a number of different stocks. And so what we're going to do in this video is cover those stocks. I've already analyzed them, in fact. So we're going to cover them. We're going to look at the technicals. We're going to look at the charts and try to get an assessment about whether or not they make sense. We're going to start off with the index ETFs, like the SPY, the QQQ, the Dow Jones, the Russell 2000, the VIX, which spiked 11.84% today. We will take a look at Apple, Google, Meta, Microsoft, Netflix, NVIDIA, and Tesla. We will also take a look at, let's see here, about 22 stocks and ETFs all mixed up. By the way, I did highlight the strongest ones on the top. So out of the 22, just 6 passed the Ichimoku test. We're going to talk about that in a second. And then we also have 6 requests from our members. We're going to look at those as well. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and start off by taking a look at the heat map. Get us a little bit of an assessment of how the S&P 500 did today and what specific sectors were strong. It was consumer defensives were really strong today. Utilities did well. Energy stocks were mixed. The healthcare stocks did quite well. Eli Lilly was up 4.84%, for example. A lot of the medical device stocks, like Abbott, was up. But the financials, look at the red here. Lots of red for the financials. A lot of the software companies didn't do so well. NVIDIA up 0.91%. This after market right now. So NVIDIA is actually moving up currently after market. Apple up 0.6. Now they're coming out with their earnings announcement on Wednesday, so we'll have a better assessment. But I mean, that's something positive. Let's also take a look at the ETFs today. How did they do? Exchange traded funds. You'll notice that a lot of the inverse ETFs were up today. Commodity ETFs like gold and silver were up. We're going to take a look at GLD and SLV in this video. For global miners, they were up too. Okay. So, yeah, let's go ahead and get started actually. So here we have it. We've got only one of these ETFs here, and it's called FEZ. That's the Euro Stocks 50 ETF. It's the only one that passes the Ichimoku test. Now, what is that? Ichimoku. Some of you guys are new, may not be familiar with this indicator. It's been around for a while. It was published actually in the late 1960s, this indicator. Incepted in Japan in the late 1930s. which is wild, right? And now it's become a very popular indicator by technical analysts, but also by financial institutions. They still use this quite a bit. Why? Because it's comprehensive and it's actually rules based. And the rules essentially are the following. What we're looking for is for price, these Japanese candlesticks, to be above the green line, the red line, this light colored blue line, and purple line. What are those? The green line is the midpoint of the last 9 periods. So it's an average. The red line is the midpoint of the last 26, so it's a little slower. And they call the green line Tenkan-sen, and the red line is the Kijun-sen. Then you've got the cloud itself, which is comprised of 2 lines. The Senku span A, which is the midpoint of those 2 moving averages, projected 26 periods into the future. That's where you'll find the line, okay? And then the purple line, which is Senku span B, that's the midpoint of the last 52 periods, even longer than the Kijun-sen. But instead of projecting it under the candle or above it, it's projected 26 periods into the future. That's what creates the cloud itself. So as price moves, so does the cloud. And the thickness of the cloud can tell us a little bit about the strength of the trend. The thicker it is, the stronger the trend. And we have one last line, and that's the Chiku span, which is this white line that you see in the background here. Now, that's actually today's price. Believe it or not, that's today's price in a line form. But instead of it being, in a line right here, they projected 26 periods into the past. The idea is to see where that white line is in relation to the candle 26 periods ago. If it is above it, that's bullish. If it's under, like in the past, we'll go back a little bit here. Right over here was bearish. We can go further back. Okay, here was a good point right here. So you can see the white line was underpriced. You can see the decline that was happening at that time. Once the white line got above, if we were to project that out 26 periods into the future, let's do that. Let's measure actually. So right here, for example, it got above, right? So if we go into the future 26 periods, it would fall right around this candle here, okay? And then you can see the that nice move up. And it makes sense after that big pullback in April. That was Donald Trump's original threats of tariffs, and then he reversed course, right? Will he reverse course again? Probably, you know, with a 15%. I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, it's all over the place. These tariffs are ridiculous at this point. But FEZ is the only one right now that's looking really, really strong. Here's the daily chart. Here's the weekly chart. Very strong uptrend. And it makes sense. The European stocks aren't going to be affected. And if anything, they're going to be, I think they've come to the realization like it's probably best to not deal at all with this whole situation and just probably, just not pay attention to any of the whole tariff news, especially after the Supreme Court came out and said that it was illegal to actually be posting these. Now, he's, of course, going to try to fight this. We'll see what happens with that. But, for the time being, the Euro stocks seem to be the strongest place to be. All right. In fact, they had the lowest loss today. It was only down 0.26%. Here's the weekly chart. You can see prices above the moving averages above the cloud. Here it is on the daily chart as well. So in my analysis, what I'm always looking for is 2 time frames to basically have confluence. We're looking for the weekly and the daily to be giving us very bullish charts with the Ichimoku. And if it passes the test, the Ichimoku test, it will get a little blue flag like you see right here. If it doesn't, like the SPY over here, which was down 1.02%. Why is that? Well, look at it. Price is inside the Ichimoku cloud right now. The Chiku span, the white line, is underpriced. Remember what we said just a second ago? That's bearish. The cloud itself is very, very flat, and it's very, very thin, which is not very bullish. It's not a bullish trend. It's just basically moving sideways, right? And you can see that, of course, in price, the price action. Right? We've been in this very, very long consolidated area for a very, very long time. The market has not been moving up. It's just been moving sideways. And that's kind of concerning that it's actually moving this in this direction for this long. It's almost like, there's like after that big accumulation stage, we might see more and more money come out of the market soon. And if it breaks down further, that could be a big problem for the SPY. Right now, we're still holding up. Okay, so that's positive, but I'd be extra cautious here. And in fact, when you look at the weekly chart as well, we're currently under the Tenkan, the 9 period. Here's the QQQ ETF, which is also just holding right above that 26 period for basically a month now, right? We've been in between the two moving averages for one whole month. And on the daily chart, we are currently under the Ichimoku cloud, and that's very bearish. The good news is we have not created a lower low yet. So we do have a lower high here from the prior one. Okay, you can see that downward, basically it's a downward channel that we're in right now. If we take out these lows, expect the Qs to drop a lot further. I mean, it will certainly come to at least retest the 200 that's rising right there. That's that dotted yellow line that you see here. It's going to certainly do that if it continues to drop. Now, let's look at the Dow Jones. Here's the Dow on the daily chart, also pulling back, but finding support at the cloud. So that's good that it's stalled right there. What I don't like is what I'm seeing down below here with our secondary indicator, the directional movement index. We've got this at a setting of 9, and we also have the ADX9 superimposed on top of the directional movement index. What does it tell us? Well, when the red line is above the green line, we're in a downward trend. Okay, so the direction is negative when the red line is above the green line. So it's obvious. You can see that above. It also tells us the ADX tells us about the momentum. So if the momentum is increasing and the red line is moving up and the green line is moving down, that's also very negative. I mean, down 1.63%. The only good news that I see here is that we're stalling right at the top of the cloud. And many times when price comes to the cloud, we'll see a bounce. But it's not a guarantee. It's just a higher probability that we'll see a bounce tomorrow. And of course, Wednesday is going to be the ultimate decision-making day, I think, for the markets, because Nvidia is going to certainly have a huge impact on how the rest of the market moves. So we'll watch that. Here's a weekly chart on Dow. It's under the Tenkan. But just keep in mind something very important. When we're looking at a weekly chart and it's just Monday, this candle is still forming. We won't know what this candle actually looks like until Friday afternoon, right? So around 3:30, we'll have a really good sense of how this chart is going to be. So don't pay as much attention um, if this because the candle is still forming here. Okay, but it's something to just recognize in the back of your mind that yeah, we're under the Tenkan. That's not a good place to be. And on the daily chart, like I said, we've been pulling back. So how about the Russell? Russell is also pulling down here, down 1.55% today. The directional movement index, the ADX hasn't started moving up yet, so that's good. It's more flat here on the daily chart, and on the weekly, we're still holding up above the Tenkan. So notice how the one unique feature about this moving average is that it actually flattens out. Do you see that? It becomes very, very flat, horizontal, and that's when we see price really just moving sideways for an extended period of time. And the longer it stays in that, it becomes a stronger level of support, actually. So that's good. Now, if it breaks under, it will come the next level of resistance. I'm sorry, support will be the red line, the Kijun like it was over here, and it might bounce at that point. It could certainly break through. We'll find out. The good news also in the Russell is the green line is above the red line still in the weekly. On the daily chart, we got a crossover here, negative crossover. We've been having a lot of crossovers because of the fact that price has just been stagnant and consolidating for so long. So the indicator represents that as well. You see green crossing above the red, then the red crossing above the green, and then so on and so forth. It just keeps on a lot of crisscrossing happening. That's not conducive to any specific trend. It's just telling us that there's nothing happening here, essentially. The VIX breaking through the cloud, which is not good. The VIX is the market volatility index, which represents the volatility and fear in the markets. And so we're getting a bullish cloud here with the Senkou Span A just crossing above the Kijun. I'm sorry, the Senkou Span A crossing above the Senkou Span B. That's actually normally it's a bullish thing if it's any other instrument, but when it's happening with a VIX, that's negative. We don't want to see the VIX and volatility increasing. That's going to obviously going to cause prices in all the index ETFs here to decline as it did today. So this is not a good sign for this specific instrument. We'll see what happens with that, if it's going to spike some more tomorrow or not. Let's look at the weekly chart on that. It's still under the cloud on the weekly here, so that's good. Okay, let's go to the Mag 7. Let's take a look at those. None of these have a flag, by the way, so just isn't that interesting? These are considered to be some of the best companies to own, right? Not at this time, in my opinion, not quite yet. We've been in a stupor here. We did have a beautiful move here in 2025, obviously with Apple. You can see that nice, big, strong uptrend. But once we broke through, these lows here, the trend was broken. And here's the lower high from this high. We took out that low, and then we created a downward little channel here. Price did break back above, making a higher high. We do have a higher low, but we're still under the cloud now. So I don't know if this is going to turn into anything. We certainly haven't taken out this prior high here. So I'd be a little bit skeptical about Apple at this point still, right? As you can see here, we have price pierced into the cloud and then it dropped right back under and closed under. And here's the weekly chart. Okay, so the weekly does look more bullish, obviously. So we'll see. We will see soon. In the next few days or so, this week, we'll find out what happens. If Apple's going, if again, Nvidia is going to, I think, going to help spiral things to the upside. If the our earnings announcement is positive. Let's look at Google next. Here's the daily chart on Google. We're still inside the cloud. So you can see, like I said before, a lot of times when price comes to the, whether it's the top of the cloud here or the bottom, and it will find support. And it did find support here, right? And it's bouncing. Now it's finding resistance at the top of the cloud, which is normal too. If it can break through, that's wonderful, but I don't see that happening. Right now, what I'm also seeing is a dark cloud cover pattern, guys. Check this out. It's those two candles. Let me show you what that looks like on our cheat sheet. Here we have the bearish double candle patterns. This is the pattern right here. After a move up, you have this bullish candle that you see right here, followed by a negative candle, a red candle, that gapped up, but then dropped and closed within the body of the prior candle. That's called dark cloud cover, like a dark cloud hovering above that bullish candle. That's what we have with Google. Okay, so it gapped up, dropped into the body. So it's more bearish than bullish here, down 1.11%. Let's look at the weekly chart for Google. Also under the tank, it's installed right there and then started getting sold off. This red candle represents, it tells us that, yeah, price moved up and then started dropping. So let's look at the 5-minute. Okay. So yeah, there's the gap up right there. Okay. There's that dotted green line is the opening price. And you can see it spent the rest of the day just dropping. And so on the 5-minute chart, we're under the cloud. You look at a 2-hour chart of Google, it doesn't look pretty either. We can see, for example, how price stalled a little bit here at the 200 on the 2-hour, dropped, came back up to the 200-day, and then started dropping again. So when you get multiple time frames giving you negative information, it's usually not a good idea to be jumping into the stock. Okay, you want to look for a company that's showing strength, not weakness. At least that's my strategy. Here's Meta. Meta is under the 200-day moving average. Okay, under the Ichimoku cloud. That's the 2-hour. Here's the daily chart. We're under the cloud. Here's the weekly chart. It also looks like we're currently under the cloud, but again, it's still forming. So we'll see where it ends up. But Meta is not a place I'd be investing in. Microsoft also declining, down 3.18. We can see that coming close to the 200. Maybe we'll get a bounce here. Who knows? A lot of times that will happen. Price comes to the 200 and bounces. Here's some more examples over here with Microsoft in the past. Whenever it hit that 200-day, how price started getting bought up, or the stock started getting bought up, moving the price up. Now it was down 3.18%. Their next earnings aren't until April 29th. So, yeah, it's been selling off heavily here. That's the weekly chart. There's the daily chart, looking very bearish. And it also took out this low today. So you can see that descending triangle pattern, right? That's also a bearish pattern that you're seeing. That is also something that you can find on this cheat sheet that I have right here. Let's take a look at that. There it is, descending triangle. Okay. If you guys want to get access to these, this cheat sheet and this one, the patterns reference sheet for Japanese candlesticks, you can find it on my X page. So you'll find it under @BlueCloudTrader. There's also a link. Let me show you guys how to get that link. If you're on my channel here, YouTube, go to 10 more links, scroll down, and you will find my Twitter page right there. You can just click on that link. If you want to become a member of the channel, you click on this one. If you like the software that I'm using right now for my charting, you can basically click on this. And if you like FinViz Elite, now FinViz Elite is the this platform here. This is a great one. You can do a lot of things with this. You can check out the news, for example, charts. Okay, also has the Ichimoku if you do the FinViz Elite option. So definitely use that affiliate link if you do decide to, if you do decide that you want to try it out. Okay, let's get back to the charts. Let's look at the next one, Netflix, which is still in a decline. Now, one more thing I want to reiterate is the Ichimoku in Japanese, it stands for at a glance. The idea is to simplify the process of evaluating stocks. We don't want to make the process overly complicated. You should certainly always look at the fundamentals like profit margins, okay, sales growth rates, maybe the price of sales and price to earnings growth ratios, and all these other things too. But if you're looking for simplicity as far as recognizing what's happening with the stock right now and what's been happening with it in the most recent past, right? So we let's say we look at a weekly chart here. Now you can see where things started to break down. It all started happening once we had that negative crossover, the faster moving average there crossed under the slower one, right? And since that point, Netflix has actually dropped about 35.7%. So we haven't had any new buy signals here for a long time. Alternatively, you want to figure out when it's appropriate to get in. This indicator, again, Ichimoku stands for at a glance. Here's the breakout above the Ichimoku cloud right here. Okay, from that point, if we were to measure the move up from here to this high point, hypothetically, it's a 214% move in 2.1 years. Okay. And since then, since that high there, it's down 43.49%. So the indicator is very useful. Yeah, you're going to have some moments in time where you're going to have these pullbacks. And these are not totally natural. And then you get new buy signals. Okay. Maybe you see something like this, like a little pullback over here. There's a nice spot to get in. You see another one over here, you get back in. Maybe you see another one here, you get back in. Okay, maybe you add to your position. All right. Anyway, let's keep going, guys. So Netflix, I would stay out of that one. Obviously, there's the weekly chart. Here's the daily chart, looking extremely bearish still. Nvidia. Now, Nvidia, as I said, they're coming out with their earnings on the 25th. That's just 2 days from now. Right now, after hours, it's up 0.96%. We can look at the 5-minute chart here. And let me just switch actually, it's up a little, probably more than that. Let me click on the little button here that includes post-market. Okay. Yeah, it hasn't really, this is a grayed out box. This is from like after 4 p.m. It's actually just flat. There really isn't much happening here. So just be, you know, personally, this is not something I would be looking to jump into right before the earnings announcement because Nvidia can be very volatile. It has a beta of 2.07, and we could see a jump either to the upside or to the downside If I knew for sure that was going to be an upside, of course I'd be buying it up now. But it could certainly also drop 10, 15, sometimes 20% all in one day because of the earnings announcement. So be cautious with Nvidia right now. Maybe reduce positions if you're uncertain about where this is heading. Anyway, Tesla. Let's look at Tesla. Um, Tesla is stalling at the 200. Now, it's under the Ichimoku cloud. We have a bearish cloud here. The Chiku span is underpriced on the daily chart. Everything is looking negative for Tesla except for the 200-day that's rising and it's coming close to it. It's only 2.6% away. Here's a weekly chart under the Kijun-sen, the 26 period currently. All right. And it doesn't look really pretty here because the ADX is moving up. Red line is above the green line on the directional movement index. That's not good either. So I'd stay out of that one. Okay, let's get into these other stocks they talked about. Let's look at GLD, gold, which I like, up 2.61%. Very bullish, right? Look at this cloud. This is exactly what you're looking for. On the daily chart, we had that pullback. And today, GLD, you can see the Tenkan-sen is crossing above the Kijun-sen. Price is above. Okay, everything here. If I show you the trend lines here, you can see that ascending triangle pattern has been broken. Price is above that level. It's above the 470.06. I've been talking about this little squeeze that's been happening here for multiple weeks now, and cautioning about getting in until we get some confirmation. We do have that now. Even on the directional movement index, notice how the ADX is moving up, green line is moving up, red line is moving down. And if you want even more confirmation, you can look at the volume, which also helps to give us some more insight. Volume is increasing here day after day, which means there's more and more people buying it up here as it's going up. So that's really good. Gold, I like. In fact, this weekend I made a recommendation on gold. And this weekend I also added a number of gold stocks to the Blue Cloud portfolio. If you guys want to get access to the portfolio and see what types of stocks are in it, here's the video that I did. Actually, this is an older one. Let me just show you the most recent one. This is 2 days ago. Okay. You can get access to this by becoming a member. To become a member, you can click the join button on my channel. If you click on that join button, you do need to become a Blue Cloud Trader level member. Or you can also get access to those videos under Blue Cloud Legend. The difference between these two tiers here is that under Blue Cloud Legend, you also get access to my daily stock and ETF trades. Okay, so like any new trades that I place throughout the day, I share those. If you just want to support the channel, become a Blue Cloud supporter, and I appreciate you. And if you subscribe, that's free to subscribe. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever I pop out a new video. All right, let's get back to the charts. So gold, I like. INFL, Inflation Beneficiaries ETF, up 0.13% on the daily chart. It looks good overall. This is a low beta type stock, which means, see how it says 0.48 right there under beta, which means it doesn't move much. It's only up 0.13%. From the breakout, for example, down here, it has moved up 15.42%. That's since January 8th. But from this point here, it's moved up just 4.5% over the last couple of weeks. All right, MPWR, Monolithic Power Systems. I like this one on the daily chart. It's above Tenkan-sen, above Kijun-sen, even though it dropped 1.17%. Everything looks bullish here on the charts, on the weekly chart as well. In fact, it looks like it's kind of building a nice bullish pennant. I'll show you that as well, guys. Check this little pattern out. So that's a bullish pennant pattern. So you can see the nice move that it had right here, where it's moved up. Okay, so let me show you what that looks like on the cheat sheet. So to get access to those, click on, once you're in my channel here on x.com, under App Blue Cloud Trader, scroll down and click on Highlights, this tab here, and then scroll down until you see it. There's the candle pattern reference sheet, and there is the patterns cheat sheet. And this is the pennant bullish variant right here. So again, just show you that. There's the move up. There's the pennant pattern. And if it breaks through that top part there, that trend line, that's going to be very bullish there. And I expect it to move up and continue moving up. So that's MPWR. It is in the technology sector. It's in the semiconductor space. So that's going to be dependent, I think, mostly on, again, NVIDIA as well, because that will help lift all the semiconductor stocks if it goes up on Wednesday. MRK, Merck, is above the 120.30 level. I like Merck as well. Healthcare sector did pretty well today, up 1.32% on this one. Here's the daily chart, holding up above all the moving averages. Not a bad stock to own in this specific environment. It's a more defensive, type of stock. You've got PCG. Utilities did well today. Pacific Gas and Electric Company. Looks great here on the daily, up 0.95%. On the weekly chart as well, 3 weeks above the cloud. That was Farmer Jim's final trade back in October. I think he was the one who called this one as well this time around. Now it back here you can see that we were in this sort of decline. Now that we've broken through that, I think we should see a continuation to the upside. That's a weekly level. Weekly chart that we're looking at here, ADX is moving up, so we should see a more extended move to the upside here with PCG. TJX companies also looking very strong on the weekly chart, above the cloud, above the moving averages. And on the daily chart, same thing. And the directional movement index looks good too. All right. The rest of these, there's something off technically about all these remaining stocks. So that's why I'm not going to spend too much time. I'm just going to tell you what's wrong with it. And we're going to move on to the next one. No reason to overanalyze anything. When something is off, look for the strongest ones. That's my take on it. Now, silver today actually was up 4.39%, but it does not get the flag quite yet. Why is that? There's a few things that the indicators telling me are still off about silver. Number one, look at the Chiku span here. It's underpriced still. Look at the 9 period. It's under the 26. That's also bearish. Okay. Price is under the 26 period. That's bearish. The cloud itself, the future cloud on the daily chart, is still bearish. Single span A is under the single span B. The green line just recently crossed above the red line. That's good, but the ADX is still moving sideways here. I'm not convinced yet with silver as much as I am with gold. When you take a look at the silver and then you look at gold, look at the difference here. Okay. So SLV, as I mentioned before, was actually creating a descending triangle, but it did break above that. So it kind of, I don't know if it's, I think we might need to call this more of a box type scenario. Like, it's kind of stuck in a consolidation area here. I mean, it may still need to break above this high, in my opinion, before we can see a move back up above silver. This is also a pattern on the cheat sheet. Let me just show you that one too. Here it is. So this is called the rectangle. The bullish variant is, of course, when price gets stuck inside, and then of course we see it break through to the top, above the top of it. Then of course, obviously, that's going to be the bullish variant. If it is, if it gets under the box, it's going to be very bearish. And so we'll see what happens with silver. All right. I like its move today. It's not a bad move. All right, what else, folks? What else? We want to look at the Adobe. Let's look at Adobe real quick, which is under the cloud, under the moving averages. So we skip that one. Look at that downward channel that it's in on the weekly chart as well. Very bearish. Global X cybersecurity ETF, very bearish, under the cloud. Wouldn't touch this one. Look at that ADX moving straight up. Okay. It's hard to determine when this thing is going to turn around until we see the actual movement, the change in direction. CBRE on the weekly chart, holding up above the cloud, but you can see the ADX is moving up and the red line is still above the green line, so that's bearish. I would stay out of that one. Here's a daily chart where it's under. You can see how it came up to the 200 and then bounced. It basically got rejected at the 200 and then it's now continuing to move down. CRWD, CrowdStrike, is still dropping under the cloud on the daily chart, and on the weekly chart, it's under the cloud too. Disney is inside the cloud, and on the daily chart, it's under, so no on Disney. IGV is under the cloud, obviously, very bearish here. That's the software index fund. As I mentioned last week and the week before and the week before that, anytime that they brought this specific ETF up, I said, guys, don't buy into this, that this is the bottom here. It's more than likely to continue to the downside. We don't have any evidence here that suggested that we should be buying IGV. Notice how price was basically stalling every time it came to the Tenkan-sen. Okay, so when that's happening and you see rejection every time, and then it takes out this low here, that's not good. And look at the volume too. So I see a continuation here to the downside for the software index fund, at least for the time being. Eli Lilly, on the other hand, up 4.82. Nothing special happening here either. It's just a very, very long extended consolidation since December. Okay. We haven't taken out this high here. So I'd hold off on Eli Lilly. Nike also not looking particularly great here. It's down 3.55% into the cloud. Hit that 200 and dropped, right? Hit it over here, dropped. Hit it over here and dropped. So multiple times. Wow, 4 times in a row. Maybe the next time it will break. We'll see. ONON on the daily chart is inside the cloud. No thanks on that one. Here's the weekly chart. Also under. Blue Owl Capital is still declining on the weekly chart under the 200. No thanks. RSP on the weekly chart looks good. Okay, that's the Invesco S&P 500 equal weight ETF, and that's been doing okay. But because of the most recent news here on the daily chart, it did cross under the 9 period today, so it lost its blue flag. It had the blue flag on Friday last week. You can see that for 5 days in a row there, and now we had that. Today was a bad day for the markets, and I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Maybe we'll get a bounce tomorrow. We'll see. Maybe we'll have a turnaround Tuesday, as they call it. Snowflake, no, it's dropped 8.6%. There was no reason to jump into this in any point while it's under the moving averages here or in the cloud. TXN, Texas Instrument, on the daily chart is under the Tenkan-sen currently. It looks bullish overall. This one could certainly break back above. It was up 0.06%. Here's a weekly chart. It looks better, a lot better than some of the rest of these. Okay, it's bullish on the weekly, but on the daily chart, it still needs to break above that green line there. XLF, no thanks on that one. Financial ETFs today took a big hit, down 3.35%. So I wouldn't be adding positions here, essentially. If you have financial stocks, you need to figure out how to manage those stocks and determine whether you want to hold them. Reduce your position sizing, maybe do some hedging with inverse ETFs. I mean, that's a lot of the stuff that I talk about in the member only videos. XLI industrial ETF is under the Tenkan-sen today for the first time in a while. Last time we were under was back on January 28th. So that's not a good sign that the XLI dropped. Okay, here's the weekly chart though. Still in a very bullish trend overall. That's all the stocks they talked about. Now we're going to look into some of the members' requests very quickly. We've got 6 stocks that we're going to look through. Stocks and ETFs. Here's one. IBRX, Immunity Bio Inc. It's in the healthcare sector, biotech. They're not a profitable company yet, but they have a capitalization of $8.2 billion. It's $9.83 per share. We got a reversal candle today, even though it was up 12.99% today. And this is a very volatile stock because of the price. I mean, since it broke the cloud here, it's up 77.44%. So you have to be really careful with stocks like this, obviously. But there's a lot of volume that's coming into this right now. This is multiple weeks, actually. I'm sorry. This is since January 16th. It's moved up 81%. Here's a daily chart that represents some of that too. So here you see those little pullbacks, little buy signal there, another buy signal over here. And now in my opinion, this is a good place to take some profits based on this type of candle and the distance from the moving averages here. It's got a little far away. All right, let's go to the next one. CCJ, Kamiko Corporation. Tenkan-sen is under the Kijun-sen. It looks like we've got we have a rectangle pattern here. Do you see? Oops, hold on. Do you see that? So I would wait to see what happens here. I mean, it's got to make a move either to the upside or to the downside. Right now, would not be adding positions here, obviously, based on that. And because of this negative crossover. That's the daily chart. Here's the weekly. It looks more bullish, obviously. CRVS, that one on the weekly chart has pulled back for 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, and now it's stalling here at the Kijinsen, which is interesting. This week, today, up 3.86%. You know, you want to see if you can get this candle. We won't know what that candle looks like until Friday, unfortunately. It has not formed fully yet. This is just one day that's creating this weekly chart. Here's the daily chart. We haven't gotten back above that Tenkan, so we don't have a buy signal here on the daily chart either. And the negative DI is above the red line. I'm sorry, the negative DI is above the positive DI. So that's also not positive. Yeah, not something I would be jumping into, obviously. MELI, that's the Mercado Libre. Here's a weekly chart. We're currently under the cloud. We have a bearish cloud. Chico Spin is under price on the weekly. I don't know where this candle is going to close. I mean, it could be just again, it's still forming. You can see the support level right there. You know, by the end of the week, this could certainly get back above. So that's what I'd be watching very closely there. The level, the specific dollar level is around 1903 or so. That's the weekly chart. Here's the daily chart. NBIS, Nebius Group. Okay, that's in the technology sector, internet content information. It's inside the cloud, bullish future cloud. So we don't have a buy signal yet on the daily, and on the weekly chart, we've got that negative crossover here. So I'd stay out of this one too. And SLVR, Sprott Silver Miners and Physical Silver ETF. The other requested stock is actually in the portfolio, just letting you know. So I will be covering it in the next members only video, the one that you requested. SLVR, the Silver Miners and Physical Silver ETF. This one looks fantastic on the weekly chart. There's no issues here. Again, the one thing that I'm a little bit concerned about with silver is I'm not seeing that confirmation in the volume. Look at these weeks here. Less and less buying as price is moving up here these last 4 weeks. The volume hasn't really been confirming it, right? You generally want to see the volume increasing as price is moving up. That's more of a confirmation sort of that, hey, there's more and more participation. There's more volume. There's more trades being placed. I don't see that yet on the weekly chart. What about the daily? On the daily, you do see it. Okay, so these last, you can see 3 days, the volume started coming back into silver. It broke through this level here, right? And it broke above the Kijinsen. Now the only thing here is the faster moving average has to cross above the red line. But yeah, I mean, I like it overall, except for the fact that we've got that negative crossover that's holding it back. And it also looks like the directional movement index is also turning bullish here. Okay, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting the channel. Remember, it's free to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell if you want to get access to future videos. Okay. And once you become a member, once you join, if you hit the join button and you become a member, there'll be a new little tab that pops up next to posts, say membership. It will be right next to posts. And you click on that little tab and you'll be able to access the posts, the daily posts that I place. All right. Again, thanks for watching. I will catch you all in the next video.